Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
Without further ado, as I kind of announced her before the break, Amber Case.
Hello. Oh yes, Portland. There are some Portlanders in this front row. Yay! How many of you are from Seattle, by the way? Okay, excellent. So I am here as a cyborg anthropologist to teach you about, first, what that term is, and secondly, about the culture that we're living in. Traditionally, anthropologists go out to another country and look at people and they say, oh, how fascinating that culture is, how strange they are, how different they are. And then they don't realize that they're living in a really weird world as is. So cyborg anthropology is about looking at our world and thinking it's really weird, instead of looking at somebody else's world and thinking it's really strange. So I'm at Case Organic on Twitter because people like doing things like following people. So when I say cyborg anthropology, people generally think about this. And, well, part of it is that, true, but I'd like to give some history behind where this concept came from, which you'll see later. So what's cyborg anthropology? So I can't answer that completely yet. Before, we have to talk about prosthetic culture. So Amy Mullins has prosthetic legs, and they allow her to run. I would run right now, but the microphone would make all these horrible noises, so I'm not going to do that. But basically, it helps her to move. But that's not the only prosthetic that exists, even though that's called a prosthetic. So if this extends the capability of the legs, we have phones, which extend the capability of the ears. And we have laptops, which extend the capability of our fingers, and cars, which extend the capability of our ability to travel really fast in closed spaces with lots of loud music, looking really awesome. So, cyborg anthropology studies how technology augments our ability to communicate and live. So, Maureen McHugh talked about this idea of where do humans end and machines begin? Or machines end and humans begin? What is the difference, really? Are we really just humans? When have we started to become somewhat non-human in a communication between humans and non-humans, or objects and people? That makes us cyborgs. So for instance, the term cyborg, 1960, from Kleins and Kleins, using it to describe an organism to which exogenous components had been added for the purpose of adapting it to new environments. So external components get attached to somebody, and it helps them navigate new crazy environments. Well, what kind of environments are these? Well, the most classic is space. So this is a definite cyborg. There's the outside, and there's the inside. There's the really crazy environment of space, and there's all these technosocial components that are acting in unison with each other in this symbiotic biological relationship to make sure that this guy doesn't get destroyed when he goes into an environment that doesn't make any sense. Like, why are we going into this environment? Why, as humans, do we go? But we have to become cyborgs in order to go. It's our external way of kind of escaping evolution and saying, well, I'm going to just evolve 1 or 2 million years really quickly by just attaching external objects. So that's kind of what we're doing today. There's another gratuitous image if you'd like to see one. So space is really similar to the Information Society. And if you don't listen to this band, you should, because I'm an 80s nerd, so I apologize. So the Information Society is what we're living in, but it kind of looks like space, which is really odd, because the space is internal and fourth dimensional. So we're all these cyborgs with our laptops navigating this internal, fourth dimensional, unseeable space everywhere we go, every day. From the moment we check our email, to our social networks, to our phones, we're these little astronauts using our laptops as these exoskeletons to go into space. So that makes us cyborgs, but low-tech cyborgs because we're not always connected. So this is what the internet looks like. Some of these, like the green ones, I think are .coms, and the blue ones are like .orgs, and there's some .govs in there. but it looks very much like a universe looks like. You can see this gravity towards certain things. And each one of these nodes has things like that. So this guy is also a cyborg. If we go back in time and we look at the development of tools and prosthetics, the caveman with a hammer is like, he's augmenting his fist. So, sorry. So sometimes we fail just like that. So that's a problem we should really solve. So civilization and its discontents. So Freud wrote this book called Civilization and its Discontents, and he said, ours is a future in which our everyday objects could possibly turn against us. And I think that definitely happens quite a bit these days. So omit unnecessary cyborgs. This is the rule. And there's a solution to this, not the pants zipper one, I'm sorry. And the solution, if the PowerPoint slide will advance, is to use friendlier replacements. Okay. So it got groans from this section. This is a groaning geography, and that geography is like a laughter geography. So I'm still waiting for this. Ooh, okay. So, but has anything really changed? So we have this idea of apples. In the beginning, you go out, you hang out, and you're in an apple orchard, you know, you have like a loincloth and like a thing to hit things with, and you say, hey, look, this apple's really ripe, great, and you pick it off the tree. So what's different today? Well, we have products that we're picking off the trees, but there's no trees that we're picking things off of anymore. In our everyday experience, we're picking the items off the supermarket shelves, and the packaging tells us if the product is ripe. So the packaging is kind of a cybernetic relationship with us, telling us, hey, this is great, you should buy this object. So everybody is hunting and gathering now in supermarkets instead of in real life in forests. And sometimes people take it really far. And this is actually from meatcards.com. It's you get your business card printed on beef jerky with lasers. And they had a mock-up competition. They had all these classical fantasy images, and you had to redo one, and you got some free meat cards, and this was one of the winning entries. So sci-fi has a nice way of creating the future. We have these great communicators from Star Trek, and then we have our own universal communicator. And I think somebody sued somebody over this and actually won, and it was someone who had something to do with Star Trek. So that worked out. Like they said, well, Star Trek invented the cell phone, we sue you, and it worked out. So multiplicity of prosthetics. So instead of having prosthetic legs, we have tons of these prosthetics, and there's tons and tons and tons and tons of them, and they're all over us and attached to us every day. So early prosthetics, we have the hammer, and that hasn't changed much over time, the extension of the fist. Great. We have the knife, that hasn't changed over time, thousands of years. And then we have, well, here's a Cray supercomputer, and then we have a laptop. Nothing about this says what it does. Nothing about this says what it does. Obviously, it's a really strange tool compared to how you think about the evolution of everyday objects. It's been really stable. Suddenly, it's been really crazy, and it's just started going, okay, it's solid, 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 thinner, 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 lighter, lighter, lighter. All your data is evaporating into the cloud. So this idea of solid, liquid, air, it's almost a water cycle. All this like standard heavy technology and these buttons that you have to press, and then the screen becomes liquid, and then the buttons can be anywhere, and the interface is totally insane, and then you have augmented reality where the buttons are in the air, and you can just press them. Wow, that's amazing. So that sort of water cycle process. I don't know if everything will rain down and then turn into solids again, but I'm not the one to ask, maybe, hopefully, or hopefully. So the idea of the scrying pool is this, you know, you go and you say, I want to see what somebody's doing in another country, and you go to like this witch and they tell you these amazing things in like the fantasy books. Well, we can do that with our iPhone. We can say, I want to see what's happening in China. I want to see real time what's happening in this other country. I want to see what's happening with my neighbor who lives in the house next door to me, but I use the iPhone to see what they're doing to access their webcam because I can't go over to their house. So the scrying pool is really kind of, we have these magical cell phones, and it's fantastic. Now we're all wizards and witches, and you can use a library, and you can create code, and suddenly what you write becomes something, an action in real life, which makes you an actual wizard, which is great. Code is wizardry. Hooray, excellent. So advanced prosthetics. So we have the best retailer of prosthetics is the Apple Store, because we can go in, it looks like a museum of things we can attach to our bodies to accelerate our brains and our hands, and our hands and our eyes. And you can even go to the Genius Bar and get consultation about cool stuff that you can attach to yourself and your brain. But the problem is when they break, you're a god until your ear kind of doesn't have the capability it used to. And it hurts kind of when you leave your cell phone or smash it. You're like, crap, now I can't hear all the way to Egypt at the click of a button, even though I never did that. I could have done that if my cell phone hadn't broken. So we're all shedding materials. So what does this mean? Well, that means that. Lots of materials. So we have clothes, and we get rid of them. Kind of like trees, every season the new thing comes in, and we have to throw out our clothes or put them in a closet, and they're really strange, like this idea that we're just like shedding these materials all the time. So, except these new leaves help create growth. So, tree sheds leaves, they grow new trees, there's soil. When we shed things, it doesn't create new products, it doesn't, until we start recycling. So, we share a prosthetic impulse with another creature. And if the slide goes, you can see that creature. Otherwise, we have to wait here for a minute. Okay, there we go. So it was one of the earliest forms of life to develop an exoskeleton. Click. Okay, so this is the Trilobite. And I don't know how many of you know about trilobites, but they're early prehistoric creatures. And they have 3 sections, the pleural lobe, the axial lobe, and the other pleural lobe, and then they have eyes. And what happens is these eyes are compounds, like hundreds of eyes or thousands of eyes can exist on this one creature. And they kind of look like a monitor when you look at it. But they shed their eyes. So you can actually find that trilobites shed all the parts of their body, and then they grow new ones, and they grow larger, bigger eyes with more and more little things on them. So, do we? Which is weird. And we also shed cars and things like that. So we're shedding our exoskeletons too. So there's plenty of things we shed. The thing is, there were a bunch of trilobites for a while, and then suddenly they all went extinct. I don't know if that's going to happen with us, but I'm not going to look into it too far. So the other thing is, if we're seeing all this stuff all the time on our 3 main screens, our HD TV, if you have one, our regular laptop, and our phone, the 3 screens that we primarily look at, since we spend like 80% of our lives looking at little rectangles now, then we kind of are acting like bees. A shortened URL is like a dance when a bee finds a great flower in the middle of a field and goes back to the hive and says, look, here's a dance, here's how I found it. It's kind of like sending out a bit.ly shortened link to somebody. So, here's a paper. It's the Global Superorganism and Evolutionary Cybernetic Model of the Emerging Network Society. Anyway, so if we look at this, this is kind of like how the interactions work. So here we are on the left side with, we're just minding our own business, doing things and all that. And then in the middle, something happens, like the Iran election. And then we're all like close together. We're all sharing information really densely around that topic. And then that topic levels off, and then we go back out. And then something happens like Michael Jackson dies, and we go back and we're talking about it until that evaporates and slows down. So this is kind of like how we look like when we're mapped out in our interactions online. So the problem is that privacy is getting very affected. I would love to just slap one of these, like just have like a storehouse and just put them on everyone's heads. It would be amazing, especially if they were lightweight. Maybe they could print them with a 3D printer. That'd be cool. Print your own cell phone protector. So, so when technology comes out, people get really upset and scared, and they still do. So, so teleoperators. So I don't know if you know of remote surgery, but there are these people who sit there and they can basically cut you open, from afar. Like, I really hate if like the internet were to fail while somebody was during an operation, or the fail well or something like that. But basically, yeah, just hope we don't do surgery through Twitter, although that would be really cool and bad and awful and really great. So technically, you're doing the same thing when you go online. You're teleoperating somebody's extended body. They have parts of their body that they've uploaded online, pictures of themselves, like they're created through text and updates. They have a geology of history that they're dealing with. And so when you go in and you talk about them on their wall, then it's just this kind of teleoperation that's going on, where you're remotely editing them from afar, and you're editing how people think about them. So there's this new thing called telenoia, that somewhere you're worried that that you can feel like all these, like right now, all of you have these identities that are being poked and prodded at by like millions of people online that you don't even know and you haven't even seen before. People are accessing your Facebook page and all these pages. You have this, you have a duplicated series of selves, and they're being accessed right now. And so this term telenoia is, this anxiety and fear in the face of like increasing integration with like all these connectivity and technologies, which a lot of us here don't really have because we're way into it and we know how to manage whatever we're doing. But a lot of people out there are scared shitless, and it's really upsetting. So yeah, that's what the remote surgery looks like. So all the world's a video game. Basically, you're adding +1 friend, you're adding 1 follower, you're leveling up. It's just like a really massive multiplayer game, except you get to play it in real life. And that's kind of a strange thing to think about. And also a giant spreadsheet. So like, Facebook is the best spreadsheet, one of the best spreadsheets that's ever come out. Basically, look what happened in column A2. Wow, that's really awesome. Hey, I'm looking at column B3. That's the most awesomest. Like, everybody has columns, and they're playing a giant game of spreadsheet. And they're updating their columns constantly, and then they're doing like a little equations on the columns to find out what's happening in the nearby columns. And Amazon is a big spreadsheet that tells you what's happening in other columns, and you're purchasing objects based on the cool data that you see in those columns. So we're all basically database animals. So it happens first in digital, and then it becomes reality. Or it happens as a game. So the Tamagotchi pets are great. You sit there and twiddle your thumbs a bit, and suddenly, like, the little fake creature in there lives or dies. You feed it, you have to take care of it, and people get them taken away in class, and they get really upset about it. So the same thing is happening. It looks almost the same, like what you're doing on a Tamagotchi pet, as to a cell phone, except you have multiple profiles or multiple little creatures in there that you have to deal with and that you have to like feed and take care of, and it runs out of batteries just like your phone. So you're taking care of these phones in the same way. People are sleeping next to them, waking up next to them. They're becoming like the really important things in your life. So unfortunately, that tends to happen. So unfortunately, we still have to plug everything in. We can destroy it. It's a really good one for SEO experts. Either way, we've now become famous machines. So my friend Anselm talked about if you have a lot of online profiles, suddenly you're a famous machine. And your machine is going out and connecting with people and doing things with people and teleoperating to connect friends and leveling up and being a cybernetic virtual creature that you are. And if you do a really good job of it, your machine becomes famous, and people recognize you for that famous machine. So the escape velocity of data is pretty intense. You can put tons and tons of documents into a computer, but no matter what you do, the computer doesn't get heavier. That's weird. Like, so there was something happened where they tried to take out all of the documents and put them into reality. So 1 laptop, 8 years of digital photos. It looks like that. So I know that all of you have probably a lot more data than that, or a little bit less, in your computers right now. If you were to take it out and actually put it in this room, it would fill the whole room, plus like that room and that room and that room and that room, and it would be a tremendous fire hazard. So this is a problem or a solution, the automatic production of space. You upload a file into, you make a new page in Wikipedia, you make a new page online, you make a new profile, you have a new Flickr photo. It's the automatic production of space. There's like, oh, we have a space for that. Yeah, we have space for that too. Yeah, there's tons of space. Everyone upload everything. It just keeps expanding, expanding, expanding. And then when it gets really large, the same type of data starts to compress back onto each other. Like I was on Flickr and it said, hey, that's a nice picture you took. Can you add it to the group, woman in cold weather with fur coats, hoods up? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll add it to that group. But the idea that like that type of specific data is aggregating itself. Like there's a whole group. There were like 500 people in that group. I mean, there were like 2,000 pictures. I mean, it's a great Flickr group. I highly suggest it, but I'm not obsessed like that. You know, that's like, yeah, that really small. So I always wanted to send a file this way by like sending an MP3 on a plane and having it show up and having somebody sign for it, and then like having like a little cable that goes out and actually connects to their iTunes, and then it would be really great. So history of the future. I always love this term. There's a book called The History of the Future. It's fantastic. You should all read it. It's about what people thought the future would be in the 1800s. So they're like, 2000 will be like this, and a lot of them were really spot on, which is really ironic. So Steve Mann was the first cyborg in the world. So this is a self-portrait of him in 1981. He wore like 80 pounds of computing equipment around at MIT, and he didn't really have any friends for about a year. He was live streaming his entire life, and he had a little keycording device that he could use to input things online, and he has a website, wearcam.org, and you can actually see like, it's really long, from like this period of time in which he was like live streaming his life. So he would wear this to class. He would wear it everywhere except when he went swimming and when he went to sleep. So he would apologize to people. He'd say, I'm sorry I missed your email, I was swimming. So this is kind of an evolution of it in 1993. Basically he said, why do we contort to computers? Why can't computers just conform to us? Why can't we just wear them? And then they won't interrupt our daily life. And so he'd sit at a campfire and people would be like, do you have any campfire stories? And he'd be like, yeah, let me look it up on his little viewfinder, and he'd grab a story from the internet. So you can actually watch the world through his eyes on glogger.mobi, and every once in a while I'll watch a presentation that he's at, which is really fun. So anyway, what happened is he said, well, computing's going to become really light. So if I wear 80 pounds of computer equipment in 1980, then by 1998, I have like 16 ounces, 5 ounces, and it's in my glasses, and nobody even notices that I have it at all, which is exactly what happened. So after a while, he had some friends. And they called them the cyborgs on campus. They all went around taking notes in class on their cybernetic devices. The thing is, Steve Mann got married, and his wife also became a cyborg, which is pretty interesting. And but the thing is, when he was really interested in blocking out advertising. So when he walks around with his heads-up display, he can like look at a billboard, and then he can say, I don't like that billboard. It'll have image recognition, and it will delete the billboard. And in place of the billboard, there will be a text box, and people can write to him on the billboard. So if he's at the store, he doesn't like a product, he recognizes it and cancels it out. And he can actually, his whole vision is augmented by what he doesn't want to see. So this is now his glasses right here, and this is his daughter. And they fit in there. There's a feedback loop. Reality comes in one eye, image process around the back, and then feeds back in with augmented reality on the right. So that's the up-close picture. It feeds directly onto his eye, I guess. There's a lot of really complicated papers that I've been wading through because it's really interesting stuff. So this is very similar to what Chris Pirillo does, which is basically what Steve Mann did a long time ago, but not that many people knew about it. Glogger.mobi, these are all the cyborgs right now who are doing what Steve Mann does with lighter technology. You can install it on a Nokia phone, and you can do exactly what Steve Mann did with this much technology versus 80 pounds of technology. So that whole argument of all that is solid melts into air, everything that's heavy becomes really light, everything goes into the cloud, is kind of working out here as a general trend. It's like Twitter Surveillance and surveillance. Steve Mann was interested in not having a top-down culture that everybody or that everyone should surveil each other and connect with each other, instead of like a bunch of surveillance cameras all over the place. So now, people are trying to basically have these displays at their glasses. So, you know, you could give a speech and you could have it memorized, or you could have it read in front of your vision, which might be bad or good, depending, or your directions. So people are trying to do this right now. I don't know how far it's going to come. Steve Mann did this a really long time ago, and it costs a lot of money. His whole apparatus setup is like $500,000. So, of course, augmented reality video games will show up where, you know, your kid will wear some cool sort of glasses and they'll be able to shoot things, which is totally feasible right now. So different types of input. So that's one type of input. You've got glasses and you have like a little keycorder device. Another one is you can basically, like, this person has these like clickers on her back, and as you give her a back massage, it plays a video game. So you're playing a video game on her back, but you're giving her a back massage at the same time. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Marriage counselors will be employing those soon. The other thing is Kelly Dobson from MIT. She said, why do we have to speak why do we have to speak the language of computers, or why do computers have to speak our language? When I turn on a blender, do I press on or off? Why do I have to do that? Why can't I just go rrr, and the blender will go rrr. And then, you know, and if you want to turn it up higher, like rrr, and then like rrr, right? And then there's no noise pollution. Nothing gets in the way unless your dog growls and then your blender goes off and it's bad. This one is really cool. Basically, I want to demonstrate it, but again, the microphone would hurt your ears. So pretend I am jumping into a wall like a ninja and hitting somebody else's shadow. So one person's here in this reality and one person's here in this other reality. And there's two walls. And you can see each other's shadows, but you don't see who they are. And you're shadow boxing, but you're actually hitting somebody else's shadow, and they're moving around. And it's a really cool game. But that's a bad explanation. You should look this up or come up to me and talk to me afterwards about it. So this is a really cool concept, and they have a great video about it. So this is Doug Engelbart's prototype for a binary input device, as in you type in binary just using your hands and you don't need a keyboard. So I guess I was one of the first people to beta test this. The guy sitting with me is one of Donna Haraway's students who founded the field of cyborg anthropology around like 1993, 94. And so Doug invented the mouse, and there's a video with Scoble around on the web that has more about this. But apparently, like, Doug Engelbart can just use this device, and he can type like 90 words a minute using one hand, versus like all these kids in class like that are typing at like 30 words a minute. So this is what it looks like. It's kind of an inductive device, and senses when you push your hands on it. So we've all, I don't know how many of you have seen this, but I feel it weird to retweet or re-present something that's been done. So if you haven't seen it, see it. If you have, then don't. So this is some guy using like kind of ring type devices to draw on walls with a projector from his like stomach, which is a cool idea. So then the interface can exist anywhere. This guy used his brain hooked up to EG to tweet to Twitter, which isn't that new, but it was cool that it was able to come to a larger sphere. So that's all my slides, except for this one. But I figured I would try and stop somewhat early so that there's room for at least 2 questions or 1 question. Okay. Okay, there's this guy with his question. Do we have a microphone? You can just come up on stage if you'd like. There's a mic up here.
Amber, really simple question.
Okay.
Given we go back to hammers and everything else, What can you think of that's not a prosthetic or cyborg device? Anything, please.
Oh, a tree. Well, I guess that's a prosthetic of the earth. Oh man, the definition is too widely done now. But yeah, maybe like a tree, an animal, something that doesn't like attach things. Like yeah, something that just is a holistic system that has evolved like fur onto it instead of buying a fur coat, or like leather onto it instead of buying a leather coat, or like penguin feet instead of buying snowshoes, things like that. Like, because we buy these objects instead of evolve them onto ourselves, we're able to like get rid of evolutionary time that we would have taken. So an animal that just evolves it over like 20 million years doesn't have a prosthetic device, but it took them 20 million years to get there, whereas we just hire some engineer and they get rid of 20,000 years of evolution for us and then hand it to us in a nice box. Josh?
I'll shout and you can repeat it.
Okay.
What's the state of the art in cyborg prosthetics today? I mean, you know me, you know I have my iPhone and my apps and everything. I want more. I want goggles. I want an internet implant to my brain. What are some things I should check out?
Okay, what's the state of the art in cyborg technology because I want it, and where are the things implanted in our brain, et cetera, et cetera?
We're not there yet.
No. Well, I'd say Steve Mann. Although Steve Mann basically, after he had 2 daughters, I think, and he started making musical instruments. What he wanted to do is have contact lenses that did the augmented reality that would download new prescriptions every time your eyes changed, and it would be downloadable hardware. So instead of throwing out your hardware, you download hardware as if it was software. Basically, you can download some new functionality, a bunch of new buttons when you're downloading software, but why not hardware? And why not have like a software upgrade in your eyes? So that's that. I don't know if that will come out, but I know that he's stopped in his own like development, which I'm really sad about because we could have had really cool, a little bit cooler stuff, but it's at the glasses right now. And there's a few companies that kind of do it. It's pretty low res. There was a guy, Rob Spence, who got a video camera embedded in his eye because he lost an eye. It's really low resolution, but it does have Wi-Fi. So. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Are there any other questions? Oh, there's a question.
It sounds like what you're saying is we've kind of, whoa, that's loud. It sounds like what you're saying is we've kind of gotten impatient for nature to take its course and evolve us. And so we've started going ahead and creating these own things for ourselves. Do you think this will actually, in the long term, impede our evolution? Because obviously it won't be survival of the fittest anymore, it's survival of the nerdiest.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like the survival of the nerdiest. That we will become increasingly fleshy blobs. Actually, I think that we'll become, that technology will just dissolve into the fabric of everyday reality so that nobody even notices that you're computing. As in, like, if you're wearing a heads-up display with goggles, you can be sitting there checking your email while you're talking to somebody, much like all of you are doing right now, but you won't see it. So you can do more things, and that you'll see kids with these augmented reality things where it's a whole game because it comes from games and then goes into reality first. So these kids will be running around at really fast speeds, being probably super athletic, technically, without even knowing it, playing these like games of ninjas and like shooting things that you can't even see and like acting completely crazy, and like the parents will be like, hey, I want to play this game, and they're like, no, you can't wear my glasses, and things like that. So is that all? Surely somebody has a random question that they can just arbitrarily ask. Oh, the jetpacks! Geez, I forgot the slide. There is a jetpack available. It's $500,000, but it's getting there. Yeah, yeah, exactly. We don't have jetpacks yet. But the thing is, you'd have to get a lot of like flight classes. And that's, I mean, people have enough trouble with driver's ed right now. So jetpacks, there's a question too, that. Yeah, you.
Okay, if you could choose any cybernetic augmentation, which specific one would you choose?
Oh, if I could choose any cybernetic augmentation, which one would I choose? oh, I would choose the glasses and 3 little rings, and the rings would be able to let me like do cool things and like make music. So lots of music, like something that made me sound really cool. Like something so I could walk down the street and I'd have a theme song or something. All right, yes. Oh, hey.
Is this your hobby or is this somehow a career path?
Oh, well, I didn't go over the boring technical papers that I write for large companies, but yeah. No, it's definitely like, this is what I do, this is who I am, and I had to cut out lots in the presentation because I'm used to giving like an hour-and-a-half presentations with like lots of really crazy like postmodern and super modern theory in it. So I apologize for not putting copious amounts of theory in, but it's late and I figured your brains weren't formatted correctly at this time of night. I have a 5-minute warning. That means we actually have 5 minutes before we're all going to drink beer and look at really cool pictures that Chris Krug took.
Amber, what's your favorite band? What's your theme song?
Oh, the Information Society, of course. Oh, she asked what my favorite band was. One of them is Information Society. I like, I guess I'd like Brian Eno. That's pretty good. That's kind of like, what are those answers? A stock photo answer? A cliche answer. Yeah, so, yeah, or like 80s music. Or Thomas Dolby, The Golden Age of Wireless. That one's good. Yes, excellent. Hey.
Hello? So how much do you think the cybernetics are rewiring? Hear me? How much do you think they're rewiring our own brains, and is there a limit? You know, do you think the experience of having the cybernetics is changing us, and then we're seeking out even greater cybernetics, but is there a plateau? Will we somehow reach some limit of the meat, physical, cybernetic interface?
Yeah, I think the problem is trying to get newer and faster and better things, and that this like silly quote, like nothing dulls more quickly than a cutting edge. Like all of our computers, like when I got my computer, it was the most beautiful, pristine object, and I stared at it and I didn't want to touch it. And now it's been like 3 months, and I'm like, wow, all the keys have worn off because I've typed on it so much. This sucks. Like, so we're externalizing our brains at a rate in which we can't really keep up with all these computers. Like the data that I really like is honestly 7 computers ago on like KidPix Studio, and I can't access it because it's on a floppy disk. And I don't have a floppy disk adapter, but going out to get one would mean that I couldn't spend time on the internet, which I'm completely addicted to. So I never go out because it's more convenient to have reality to come to me instead of me go to reality.
Do you expect to live long enough to date a synthetic organism?
One of my friend's dads is getting his PhD in a type of plastic that allows you to grow bone marrow on it. So, but because there's a 30 to 40 year lag when a new technology comes out, hits the university world, then goes to like the military government world, then goes to the business world, then goes to the consumer world, and then becomes adopted widely by consumers, I would say that maybe in 30 to 40 years I might see it if I'm hopefully alive at that time.
Would you consider moving to Seattle and being my best friend?
Thanks, you made me blush, man. And I almost got sucked away to Seattle, and I almost made it, and I was on that like escape, or that the escape velocity, no, the point with the black hole, thank you, Event Horizon. I was on the Event Horizon, and then I said, I don't know, and then I went back to Portland because of the tech community. So you should come down to Portland, hang out with the tech community, and totally chill, because it's the best, most incredible, well, it's not the best, but it is one of the highest and best communities. It's pretty legit. And Boulder's pretty cool, too. And Seattle's really cool. So, yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you for having me at Gnome Decks.